One of the biggest fears that people living with type 2 diabetes have is blood sugar spikes. And since all fruits contain carbohydrates, they tend to avoid that fruit group at all costs. But what if I told you that fruit never gave anyone type 2 diabetes? And as a matter of fact, is probably one of the healthiest food choices that you can make. But how is this possible if fruits spike up your blood sugar? Well, in today's video, I'll be explaining three main things. Number one, why some fruits may be spiking up your blood sugar levels beyond normal levels. Number two, how you can fix this problem. And number three, which are the best fruits that you can pick even if you're living with insulin resistance. Welcome back to the Type 2 Diabetes Revolution channel. If you're new here, my name is Jose. I am an exercise physiologist that has helped thousands of people restore normal glucose metabolism so fruits and other carbohydrate-containing foods no longer pose an issue to your blood sugar levels. Today, I'll be answering the million-dollar question. Can people living with type 2 diabetes eat fruit? The answer is a little bit more complicated than you think. But before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you're always notified about our upcoming content. For daily videos, tips, and tricks, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Our name is Type 2 Diabetes Revolution. Okay, let's get started. First, you have to understand insulin resistance, the underlying cause behind type 2 diabetes. Most people fail to realize that insulin resistance is synonymous to being carbohydrate intolerant. This is a condition that renders your cells unable to uptake glucose in a normal way. Is it reversible? Yes, but while you have insulin resistance, you will experience symptoms of carbohydrate intolerance. This means that you will respond unfavorably to all forms of carbohydrates. For the record, there's two types of carbohydrates: whole complex carbohydrates, which are the healthy ones, and refined carbohydrates, which are processed and they're not so healthy for you. But when you're insulin resistant, even healthy carbohydrates like apples or potatoes will give you a negative blood sugar response. For this reason, most people who get diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes immediately go for a low-carb diet, which of course eliminates most, if not all, fruits from your diet. And that is a big mistake because that is not the solution to reverse insulin resistance and become carbohydrate tolerant again. A low-carb diet where you're eliminating carbohydrates from your dietary pattern is a band-aid solution to reduce your blood sugar levels, but not to actually become insulin sensitive again. A low-carb diet solution is similar to fixing an overflowing sink by never opening the faucet again. That is not how you fix a broken sink, right? You always have to look at the root problem. And in the case of the overflowing sink, the problem is a clogged drain that is not letting the water flow properly. And the same concept applies to your blood sugar. The problem is not the fruit that you are eating. The problem is at a cellular level. It's the insulin resistance that has developed inside of your cells, which renders them unable to process carbohydrates correctly. That is the problem that we have to reverse in order to become carbohydrate tolerant again. As I mentioned earlier, there's two types of carbohydrates: the unhealthy ones, which are processed and refined, and the healthy ones, which are complex and whole. The problem is that all carbohydrates have been demonized because they do elicit unfavorable responses in your blood glucose when you are insulin resistant. So how do your cells become resistant to insulin, and how do you become carbohydrate intolerant? Well, what research has shown is that a buildup of fat inside of our cells, also known as intracellular lipids, disrupt insulin signaling at a cellular level. This in turn leads to our cells to resist the actions of insulin. And just to refresh your memory, insulin is that hormone that acts like a key to open the door of the cell so glucose can go in. So if that key is not working properly because our cells are not recognizing it, then the door never opens up, and then glucose can never go into the cell. And guess what happens when glucose doesn't go into the cell? It remains circulating in your bloodstream, and that is what leads to elevated blood sugar levels. This problem of fat accumulating inside of our cells is not solved by removing healthy carbohydrates like fruits from our diet. As a matter of fact, this problem is not solved by eliminating all carbohydrates from our diet. But most people get this wrong because in an insulin-resistant state, the most logical thing to do is to eliminate the foods that are causing elevations in your blood sugar. But they fail to realize that insulin resistance is actually a fat metabolism disorder that manifests as a carbohydrate intolerance problem. The solution is to make your cells insulin sensitive again by removing that fat buildup that is interfering with the insulin signaling. If you're watching this video, you most likely want to reverse the root cause of the problem and not just control your blood sugar by eliminating all carbohydrates from your diet. Well, this can actually be a reality for you, but you have to commit to making the necessary lifestyle changes that will make you insulin sensitive again. The approach that we have used to help thousands of people improve their blood sugar is known as the plant-based whole food diet. This method actually includes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. It might sound like a restrictive diet, but the amount of delicious meals that you can make from those food groups are endless. The premise of this method is to increase your fiber intake and decrease your saturated fat intake, which can be easily achievable by focusing on plant-based whole foods. This dietary pattern is also very high in nutrient density and lower in calorie density, which means that you can eat a larger volume of food with less calories per bite. In turn, this helps create a negative caloric balance in your body, which will help reduce the amount of visceral fat that you have accumulated and the intracellular fat that is causing insulin resistance. This is how you become insulin sensitive again. If you want to learn more about how to follow this method and apply it to your life, we have some free resources and trainings in the description below. Okay, I know that was a long-winded answer for a simple question, but I needed you to understand that fruits and whole complex carbohydrates are not at fault. Okay, so now you may be thinking, okay, this is great. I understand what I should be doing, but what about fructose? I thought that it was bad for me. The food source of the fructose matters the most. While fructose contained in fruit is beneficial for you, fructose from other food sources like sugar-sweetened beverages or processed foods can have an unfavorable effect in your metabolism. This may be partially explained by the difference in nutrient composition of fruit and other ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods that contain fructose tend to be more calorie dense, so they have more calories and more fats in general. These foods tend to be hyperpalatable, which means that you just want to eat a lot of them, which can result in the development of insulin resistance. On the other hand, fruit is naturally low in calories and low in fat, and it contains beneficial nutrients like fiber, water, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. The presence of fiber and phytochemicals in fruit influences how fructose is absorbed and processed in your body, leading to a slower and more controlled release of sugar into your bloodstream. The bottom line is that isolated fructose does not behave the same as fructose contained in a fiber matrix like fruit. Fiber is the non-digestible part of carbohydrates. It is abundant in fruit, particularly in apples, pears, and berries. Fruit contains a type of fiber known as soluble fiber that draws water into the gut, forming a gel-like substance that slows down digestion. This in turn regulates blood sugar spikes and is the main difference between carbohydrates coming from fruits and carbohydrates coming from ultra-processed foods that contain no fiber. Fiber plays a crucial role in reducing insulin resistance. One meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials found that soluble fiber found mostly in whole food plant-based diets containing fruit, reduced HbA1c levels by 5% compared to diets that are low in fiber. Okay, now that you understand the concept that fruit is actually good for you, you may be asking yourself, so can I drink fruit juices? The answer is that whole foods are always going to be better than processed foods. And juicing is actually a form of processing the food a little bit further. 100% fruit juice still contains vitamins and water and minerals, but the absorption of glucose differs greatly from that of whole fruit. So if you have the choice, always go for whole fruits that have not been juiced, especially because juicing does remove the fiber from the fruit. And this in turn will lead to a higher blood sugar spike. In general, eating fruit with type 2 diabetes is completely fine and actually encouraged. And remember that fruit has never given anybody type 2 diabetes. There's no study out there showing that people who eat more fruit get more type 2 diabetes. As a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. What you do have to pay attention to is your overall diet composition. What other foods that you may be eating could be contributing to insulin resistance. If your overall dietary pattern is not in check and you do have insulin resistance, you're going to continue responding unfavorably to all carbohydrates. Try increasing your consumption of plant-based whole foods. And if you do see that your blood sugar is getting a little bit higher, take a deep breath. This is completely normal, and your blood sugars will go back down to normal levels as your insulin sensitivity increases. You're not alone in this journey to reverse type 2 diabetes, so please reach out if you need any help. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I read all of your comments and I will reply to every single one of them. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.